Except fifth Sunday, so we're really excited to be able to start our Victory Sunday with Chad Landman. Chad came down last night from Columbia, Tennessee, where he's one of the ministers at the Gray Mare Church of Christ. I met Chad in person, I don't know if you remember, I think it's 2019. We did a workshop together at Montrose Church in Tennessee.
Yep.
And I'd been impressed with his work even before then, but then got to hear him and his expertise on matters relating to Christianity and technology, and just knew that at some point we needed to have him come down the road. Chad does a lot of seminars all over the country on how Christians should interact with technology, which is a very important issue that I think we fell behind on, and it caught up with us before we were ready for it. How should people of faith use these devices that our world is inundated with? I think we all know we can't get away from them now. I think for a long time some people tried to hold out and said, you know, I'm just going to stick with my flip phone and pencil and paper, and the world said, nope, you've got to use this technology. So we need to learn how to use it responsibly and faithfully. And Chad has a lot of knowledge on that subject. I believe he told me this is the 74th seminar he will have done on this subject. So he's very knowledgeable. Some of you may have submitted questions ahead of time, and he is prepared to be with us and help us out this morning. So I'm not going to take up any more of his time. I'll let him introduce what he's going to talk about as we get started this morning.
Drew says that I'm very knowledgeable because I've done so many seminars, and that's actually not true. I want to make sure that you understand I am just about the same as most of you. I hear something every time I come to a congregation, every time I come to a church, I hear something new that just blows me away at every time I come somewhere, okay? So again, I am kind of in the same situation as you, and I have 3 boys who are under 10 years old. We're going to talk about one of those boys here in just a moment. I want to invite you to turn in your Bibles to James chapter 3. James chapter 3, and we'll begin with Scripture because I want to begin every session of these with Scripture. Sometimes it's hard to make connections and hard to make lessons out of certain things in Scripture, but I think what James says in James 3 is absolutely applicable to what we're talking about. Now, I will tell you before we really begin and really get going is that this session is always intended to be number 2 of 3. And this is the longer session, and since you guys have Bible class before worship, we're going to go ahead and do number 2. So we're jumping into session number 2, so kind of right in the middle here. And we will have what would normally be session 1 or elements of session 1 That's going to be in our sermon for this morning. And so just to make sure that you understand that. Now, these are designed to build on one another, and so there's really no problem doing that. And of course, this session in particular is one of course, my 3 sessions that's designed really to elicit some questions from you. And so if you have any questions or have anything that you want to bring up as a discussion point in our class, I'd love to talk about it with you and with everybody else. I have found that at these workshops, as many of them as I have done, that parents learn more from other parents than they ever learn from me. And so it's incredibly important for you to communicate with one another, because guess what? I get to come here and I get to talk about this stuff, and then I'm gone. And maybe you can email me. I will support you, and I'll try to answer some of your questions. But at the same time, you've got to be living in your community here, and you've got to make sure that you are strengthening your community as well as strengthening your own family and your church family. And so again, if you have something to bring up, it's amazing the people that have went to church for 20 years that sit across the auditoriums from one another, and they bring something up in a digital parenting workshop that I conduct, and they will have never known that about the other person. And so again, make sure that you ask those questions. Let's go to James chapter 3. We're going to be looking at James chapter 3 specifically in verse 2, and I want to begin in verse 2. Verse 2 itself we could talk about it all day long by itself. For we all stumble in many ways, James says. And if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, also able to bridle his whole body. If we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. Look at the ships also, though they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are guided by a very small rudder, wherever the will of the pilot directs. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. Now, whenever James here says the tongue, I want you to think about your speech, your words. More specifically, I want you to think about the words that you type out on a tiny keyboard, that you are speaking those words in a virtual space, on a social network, or on a text message. I want you to think about that. I want you to think about a lot about what we say, is what he says here. The latter part of verse 5, how great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire. And the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and sea creature can be tamed and has been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who were made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. My brothers, these things ought not to be so. Those last few verses especially. Does that sound familiar? From blessing the Lord on our Father on Sundays to Mondays, we are typing out on a tiny keyboard and just bashing whoever it is that we think about, or maybe we're doing it in a private way. We're bashing, we're continually feeding that rumor mill, we're continually spreading non-truths, all these other different things. And some of us are guilty of that. I've been guilty of it. It's incredibly hard sometimes to understand the impact that our words have, both when we say them to a person that we're standing right next to, we say it on a telephone call, or we say it in a message that is public on the web for everybody to see. It is incredibly important, and in fact, it is probably, I think, the number one issue that us Christians in the 21st century face is the way that we conduct ourselves on social media, the way that we conduct ourselves with this technology. Drew made an excellent point when we started. He said it kind of caught us off guard. This technology kind of caught us off guard, and it grew so quickly, so fast, and so much that we honestly didn't know what to do with it. Now, I think what I've been doing for the past 7 years, almost 8 years now, with this digital parenting workshop, things have changed and the pendulum has swung so crazily from the left to the right and the right to the left, all sorts of different things. that it's actually, I see a lot of good things that are happening with parents of this generation. I had one guy bring that up at a workshop one time. He said, I don't know if my generation of parents will figure this out. He was about my age. He said, but I know the next generation is going to figure it out. I know the next generation, having grown up with this technology in their hands, I know they're going to know what to do and how to figure it out. So again, kind of caught us off guard. The iPhone has only been out for 15 years now? And there's 3.5 billion devices out there that are handheld devices. It's amazing to think about. And so again, we're jumping into session 2. As we go into session 2, as we start thinking about what we can do for our children, what we can do for our families and our households, I think it's important to understand James's words about how our words can be a fire that can set a forest ablaze. They are a ship sometimes, that it's a rudder of a ship that directs the whole vessel. This is a Nimitz class United States aircraft carrier. It's 1,092 feet long, 400 feet wide, 3,000 officer and crew on board. It's got between 120 and 140 various aircraft at any one time. It's a floating city. I was on 2 of these when I was in the Marine Corps for just a few weeks at a time. And when you're on it, it's like you're not even on a ship. The thing is so big. You've been on a cruise ship before. You think the cruise ships are big. This thing is unbelievably big. And it's like it's standing still. It's like you're on land when you're on the thing. They only have to refuel every 20 years because they use nuclear fuel in their reactors. But do you know how big the rudder of this ship is? You would think, oh, well, that ship is unbelievably enormous. It's probably as big as this building. It's probably as big as our parking lot and the building, right? It might be as big as this one little section of pews right here in front of me. It's 20 feet by 30 feet, maybe even smaller than that. You would think a huge ship like that needs an enormously huge rudder the size of Rhode Island or something. But it doesn't. That rudder directs that entire ship wherever it wants to go. When we went on the vessel, they had a little safety brief that said, if you fall off, we're not turning around. It is too expensive to come and pick you up. So do not fall off the top deck, please. And so, yeah, it was interesting. Now, they'd send a boat after you and stuff like that, but they're not turning that big ship around because it's thousands of dollars every time they turn that ship around. Do you understand the visual that I'm trying to get across here? Our tongues can direct very, very big things. Our words can impact in a huge way. We don't think about that when we are typing out a message that, oh, I'm so angry at this and I can't believe this. And we're going to have a couple of jokes and stuff later here in this session about what kids said about what you say as adults. So it's going to be really interesting. But when we think about that, we've got to watch what we say, especially when it is broadcast to the entire world. And we may think, oh, only a few people are going to see this. Is that the truth? I've had people dig up posts that I've made 7, 8, 10 years ago. Hey, why did you say this? And I'm like, that was 2011. Like, I don't even know what I was talking about in 2011. So we understand that kind of prospect. And again, I just wanted to make sure that we understand what James is trying to say here. And again, think about our words. Now, our second illustration that we're going to think about, we're just going to go and we're going to talk about social media this morning. These are the 3 ideas that I want to kind of think about as we think about social media and as we have that discussion here later on in the Bible class. I think one of the things that we need to worry about and the things that we are dealing with is that our own lack of knowledge about it. We may even think that we're incredibly knowledgeable, especially if we're younger. If we know about how to use the apps and know how to use the services, then we're incredibly knowledgeable about it, and that's just not true. We need to understand the impact that it has and the impact that our words have. We need to understand social media's negative influence not just on our kids, but our entire culture as a whole. Social media is pushing us apart when it was supposed to bring us together. I think we've seen that fracturing, and I think that we probably don't like it very much. Is it an amazing way to communicate? Absolutely. Is it an amazing way to get out there what you have done or share with family and friends? Absolutely. Is it being used sometimes as a weapon against us? Absolutely. And as long as we are aware of those things, we can honestly prepare for it. Third thing that we're going to talk about is how to help our kids navigate social media and become those responsible digital citizens. In fact, we're going to talk about that in all three of our sessions today. This is my son, Jacob. He's the one in the foreground. The one in the background with the goggles on his head is David, who was not supposed to be in the photo, but because he's my child, you understand. He is my little clone, David is, okay? Everybody says his facial expressions, the way that he talks, the way that he walks is the same way as me. Jacob, though, not so much. Jacob's a lot smarter than that. Jacob is an amazing kid. He loves swimming, of course. By the way, this is a 150-gallon stock tank that we got from Tractor Supply that we put out in the backyard. And y'all being from Alabama, y'all get that. Y'all understand. I mean, come on. I'm from Huntsville, so I understand. Hey, that's the best swimming pool for two little boys that we ever had, okay? And so they love it. He loves swimming. He loves watching DVDs. He loves music. Now he's gotten into editing videos. He's done stuff on his iPad, editing videos with green screens. We got him some green screen gloves so that he can do puppets and stuff. He does unbelievable stuff with an iPad, and I'm the one sitting there going, and I'm the video expert, and I'm the one sitting there going, how did you do that? And he's incredibly smart. He is just like any normal 10-year-old. He is a 10 years old going on 15 right now. Daddy, when can I have a MacBook? I'm like, hold on, pump the brakes here, son. We need to make sure that he has gotten to that stage finally where he thinks he's much older than he is. When he was 2 years old, a little bit less than 2 years old, almost 2 years old, my wife and I knew that something wasn't right. You know how you get that when your children start to get sick or something and you just know they're getting sick, you know that something's not right? We had that feeling. We had that feeling that something wasn't right. We took him to Vanderbilt Children's. It didn't take them 15 minutes, and they diagnosed him with autism spectrum disorder. Jacob is not high functioning necessarily. In fact, other than the last probably year or two, really can't hold a conversation with him about something. But he has done incredibly well since then. And when we found that diagnosis out, it hit my wife and I very, very hard. And of course, I had the typical male reaction of anger and let's fix it, right? And my wife, of course, had the reaction of just sadness. It was hard. And it was one of those situations that you have in life, and it was the first one that I can remember having in my life, honestly, where we had no clue what to do but just to give it to God. No idea what to do. And so we got him help. We got him into a special needs classroom. We got all the therapies, occupational, all the different therapies that there were available. We had them available. We have a lady that comes to our house that has come to our house for the last 8 years and has worked with him once a week, continues to work with him. It has been an incredible blessing. And the doctors and the nurses and the practitioners and the behavioral specialists and all the people that have seen Jacob and saw his progress from age 2 to age 10, almost 11 now, they have said one thing: because of early intervention. And again, if you read anything about autism, you will understand that early intervention is the absolute key. Because me and my wife swallowed our pride and took him to a hospital and got him that diagnosis, it opened up the door for all sorts of therapies and all sorts of tools for him to grow. And doctors and nurses and all the people that have worked with him have told us repeatedly, early intervention was the key. And they have said, because you were proactive in his therapy and all these other different things, because you were proactive and not reactive, that has made all the difference. If we'd have waited till 3 or 4 years old, who knows what kind of development he would have had? Who knows if he would have been where he is now? There was a special needs ministry created at Graymere essentially just for him. and it continues to bless other special needs children now. He doesn't even have to be part of that ministry anymore. He goes to a regular Bible class without an aid. It's amazing. I tell that story, again, to understand that in our digital parenting, especially when it comes to social media, especially when it comes to allowing our children to do different things on these devices, the devices that have been permeating out through our entire lives since the last 15 years, we have to be proactive, not reactive. If you're reactive, you're going to automatically be behind the 8 ball and 10 yards behind. If we are proactive in trying to at least think 2, 3, 4 steps ahead, then that's what we're going to do. That involves having a strategy with your spouse, having the understanding that we are going to have all these parental controls set and all these other different things. In our house, I don't know about yours, there's a PIN code for everything. And it's incredibly annoying, especially when our boys are in bed and I want to watch Netflix and I got to put in three PIN codes just to get to a show that I want to watch, right? But you know what? It's got to be done. Because the price that I would pay for my child watching that sometime when I'm not watching them somehow, maybe 6 o'clock in the morning, my children get up really early. I'm still in that stage. They get up really early. And what if they were to watch something that was not okay? That would be on me. And so again, we have to be proactive in all those different steps, not reactive. How many of y'all have seen this on Netflix? It's been a while now. I think it was perfectly timed. It came out, I believe, May of 2020. It was actually really interesting. If you have not seen this on Netflix, you absolutely need to pay for a month of Netflix if you don't have it and watch this. I have named this session The Social Dilemma because of the dilemma that we have, and the dilemma that we face is that these tools are amazing that we have today. The technology that we have at our fingertips is unbelievably wonderful. And we have found a way to have it used against us. We have found a way to insult somebody half a world away. We got to be better. So The Social Dilemma actually goes through, it was a special on Netflix. It actually goes through several creators that worked with companies like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. And they actually interviewed them. Those people no longer worked for those companies. And they told them, hey, this is a reality. This is what we were up against. This is what happened. And it is incredibly eye-opening. And I think that that's one of the things that we need to do. We need to open our eyes. We need to understand that this social media is really kind of controlling us. It's not us controlling it. And again, I don't mean to paint all of technology as this evil kind of monstrous thing that we shouldn't ever take part in. I think it's incredible. I think it's incredible what we can do, and I'm a absolute self-proclaimed tech nerd myself, and I will absolutely advocate for technology in any kind of course of life. But at the same time, we are in the infancy of social networking and social apps, and our kids are absolutely suffering and taking the price for it. So when we think about that, here's a couple of ideas, a couple of things that we can think about as we think about social media, and then we'll get to a little bit more lighthearted things this morning. I ask the question sometimes when I go to a parenting conference, when I have the ability and the privilege to conduct a Bible class like this, I want to ask that blanket question: what's wrong with social media? And you know who I'd like to hear from first? The kids up on the front row. What do y'all think? And again, I just want an answer. What's wrong with it? What have you seen that is wrong with it, if anything? This is a reach, I know, because I'm probably not going to get any of them to say anything. It's built to suck you in. Ooh, that's good. Do you, when you said that, do you realize that's the truth? Or are you just saying that? You absolutely understand that then. Do the rest of y'all understand that? Do the rest of y'all understand that? It is built that way. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. In fact, we're going to talk about addictions this afternoon. Make sure you stick around for this is not a plug, by the way, but make sure you stick around for our meal. And make sure you stick around for our 12:30 session because that is specifically about breaking free from digital addictions, okay? And again, technology, not bad. It's great if used properly. In fact, any tool in the right hands is great if used properly, right? But if I give a hammer to my 8-year-old, what's going to happen then? If I tell him just to go crazy with it and see what he can do with it, what's he going to do? He's going to break something. But the hammer in my dad's hands, who is a carpenter for 45 years, he knows exactly what to do with it. We have to understand that we must train our kids. It's designed to suck you in. Anything else y'all want to add? What's wrong about it? Yes, ma'am. It's designed to create a different reality. Boy, you guys are batting 1,000, man. Y'all are hitting it. That designed to suck you in, designed to create another reality. Some of these kids understand that. Now, let me ask you this as kind of an additional question to this. Even though you know those things, that it does suck you in, that it does create that alternate reality, do we still sometimes get sucked in? And do we still sometimes buy into that alternate reality? I know I do. I see the people with the awesome, say I'm a knife and a car guy, and I see the people with knives and awesome cars, and I get sucked into that reality, and it's that reality distortion field, man, on Instagram. It's like everybody's living this grand life, and I'm just not a part of it, right? What is that called? FOMO? Fear of missing out? We are thinking that we're always the ones missing out when we have to realize that those are just people like us that have the same kind of life struggles as we do, that have the same kind of bills and the issues with kids and the issues with parents that we do, all sorts of different things. So now I want to hear from the adults. What do you think is wrong with social media? Anybody? Yes, sir.
There's an article in the Birmingham News on Sunday, October the 22nd, 2017, and it's entitled, the title of it was Teens Screens. And I'll just give you three points.
You'll give me the 3 preacher points? Okay, good.
And the first one is the school stats. The percentage of high school seniors who read a non-required book or magazine nearly every day dropped from 60% in 1980 to only 16% in 2015.
I'll stop you right there. That is an absolute crazy stat that I've heard, not just from kids, but from adults. Do you know the percentage of adults that have not read a book this calendar year is? 25%. That's adults. That's not kids. We have become a society that just doesn't read anymore. Why? Because it's all instant right here. Because we can't have that sustained attention to keep our attention in a book. Sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
And the average drop in the SAT score since 2005 is -14. And it says face-to-face, 2 out of 3 U.S. teens own an iPhone. Depression, anxiety, and loneliness have shot upwards since 2012, with happiness declining. 50% teen suicide rate increased by more than 50%, as did the number of teens with clinical level depression.
We're going to talk about a little bit about that in our sermon this morning. It's not fun to hear. But depression has gone way, way up since the introduction of these smart devices. Since we have allowed our kids to be on these apps and these things that create those alternate realities that suck us in, some kids are not able to get themselves out of those things. Just since 2020, just since the pandemic had started, depression rates from 13 to 18-year-olds are up almost 20%. Now, I can spat all these things out to you, but 20% apparently in psychological circles is a huge number when you're talking about a jump like that. And so again, what are we doing? We have to ask ourselves that question. What are we doing to make sure that these kinds of things are not happening? I think that's an important question. Thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate that. Anybody else to add? Yes, sir.
There isn't any filters.
There's not any filters. There are filters sometimes if you make them, but these apps don't come with them, do they? They don't make it easy to filter them. In fact, one of the things I enjoy is actually Twitter. I have not seen, I've got a list of topics on Twitter that I don't see anything about. Because Twitter is not the place where I go to see news. It's not the place where I go to read about what's going on in D.C. this day. I don't do that. And I have that cordoned off as one of these different things. But that also shows one of those things that we maybe shouldn't do is that we understand that some place like Twitter can be a cesspool of things that we should not see at all. And so again, there is most of the time, unless we enable those, unless we do the work to go in there and create all those filters, which I would say 99% of people don't do, then absolutely, it doesn't have any filters. What else? Yes, sir. Consumes your time. Well, you're not kidding with me, are you?
I just traded my flip phone in for an iPhone, and
What is that? What do they call it? The endless scroll?
it's so easy to get home.
The gentleman right here on the front row said they're designed to suck you in. That is one of the most, the best things that these apps try to, I say the best things, one of the things, the singular things that they try to do is to try to suck you in, is that endless scroll. That scroll doesn't end, does it? And they're going to continuously feed you information. Did you know that Instagram is using the front-facing camera on your phone it takes about 25 different data points about where your eyes are looking specifically on the screen? Did you know that? Facebook is even worse. They have all sorts of access to your camera that you haven't probably given them at all, and they're even worse. And they do the same thing, and they categorize everything, even if your finger is hovering above it, they can tell. And I'm not joking about that. Your iPhone is so sensitive, and other phones are so sensitive, that it can tell where your phone is hovering above, where they think that you're going to click, and you maybe don't, and you just keep scrolling. At any one point, I think Facebook has 1,500 data points about you every single time you open the app. It's unbelievable. Yes, sir.
A lot of people think you're weird or there's something wrong with you if you do not activate in Facebook and all these things. There's got to be something wrong with you.
Yeah, there's got to be, if you're not buying into what everybody else is doing, right? There's got to be something wrong with you. You know, they said the same thing about Christians early on. That's kind of interesting. They said the same thing about us as Christians early on. Now, what would be weird is not being on it necessarily. What would be weird is that if all of us took the collective responsibility to make sure that everything that we share, everything that we like, everything that we retweet, every video that we post on TikTok, every single bit of information that comes out of a Christian's life and a Christian's heart, what would be weird is if all that was done out of love. Is if we shared Jesus with one another. I have a question here later. I think we've I don't know how much time I've got a good amount of time. We're going to run through this. I want to go back. I thought I had a slide on here, but what if the apostles had Instagram? What if Jesus had a YouTube channel? What if Peter had a TikTok? And again, I'm not saying anything. They would never have used that, obviously, because it was 2,000 years ago and they didn't have that technology then. But what if those people were alive today? How would they have used this technology that we have at our fingertips? How would Paul have used Twitter? Well, the answer to that is that they would have used that. The people in the Bible, I believe truthfully, every character in the Bible, we just read James. How would James have used this technology? Well, I think everybody would have used this technology for the glorification of God in everything that they did. And I truly believe that is, as Christians, what we are called to do. We have been given an incredible tool that can access the wealth of all human knowledge. We can do almost anything that we want to with this technology. You know what we should do? Use it to glorify God. Use it to point people to Jesus, to point people to Him. So again, excellent point. That would be weird. Not necessarily staying off of it, but using it for what it was intended to do, spread the gospel. So again, thank you so much for your comments there. I got a few points, and then we're going to get to some light stuff if we can do that and make sure we have enough time. I do want to say in a couple of different things here as we kind of get on. Social media, in fact, all of these apps and services in general, even if they don't fall under the discourse of social media, they do not have your child's best interests at heart. They don't. They don't have your best interests at heart at all. They don't have anybody. You know what their best interest is? Their bottom line, exactly. This right here. And as long as they're in the black, as long as they're making money, as long as they're pushing that forward, even a company that champions privacy, Apple, right? Apple, we care about your privacy. If Apple really cared about our privacy, they wouldn't allow Facebook to have an app on their phone. So any of these companies, including the ones that try to say and try to play like they're bigger than everybody else, they are still all about the bucks. That's their best interests, is to make sure that their shareholders are happy. I don't think I have to say this. I think you know this, but privacy is an absolute illusion. Now, I want to make sure that our kids understand that as well. When you see the words encrypted, private, all those different types of terms on these apps and services that you may use, do you truly believe that nobody can see it? Good, because everybody can see it. And when something says that it's encrypted and private, Snapchat's servers, it's interesting, Snapchat servers have been broken into 3 times over the last 18 months. Snapchat is so inept and they're such a badly run company that they can't even tell you what those data miners got. They can't even tell you what the data, what kind of information they got. That's how terrible run company they are. Oh, I know Snapchat is a favorite of some of our kids, but I can take Snapchat and bury it in the ground. Because it is a terrible app run by terrible people for a terrible purpose. They know their exact demographic. They know exactly who they are ministering to, who they are absolutely targeting, 12 to 18-year-olds, and they deliberately make sure that they keep them and hook them. So again, we need to make sure and we understand they don't care about us. They care about their bottom line. They care about becoming number one on the App Store. They care about making money. And when we think about privacy, privacy is an illusion basically everywhere. There are incredibly few exceptions to that, but those exceptions exist in super high-end hardware and government kind of stuff that we probably never even see or touch. In our regular day-to-day use of our iPhones, privacy is an illusion. The iPhone was the greatest thing that ever happened to the Central Intelligence Agency. I'm telling you, because they have a tracker and they have basically a tracker, a GPS locator, and a camera and a microphone on every single person in the United States that has one. What's funny about when these Alexa devices got really popular and everybody watching the live stream, I just set off all their things. When these Amazon Echo devices started getting really popular, and you've probably got one in your house, and again, they're harmless, okay? People started saying, well, I don't like these things listening to me. They're listening to my conversations. And I'm like, it's 2015 and you've had an iPhone for 5 years. You've been carrying around a phone and a camera and a microphone for 5 years. Just think about it for just a second. These things are everywhere. So privacy is an illusion. And the important lesson that we have to understand from that is that we have to always conduct ourselves in an appropriate way so that we don't have to worry about when somebody says anything. If I was to apply to a job here at Asheville Road, there would be absolutely no question or anything that I would have to do to say, oh, I got to secure thing, I got to delete posts, I got to do all this stuff. There would be none of that. And it's not because I'm some amazing, awesome person. It's because I don't participate in that kind of stuff. And I know that everybody, yeah, you're going to find some wacky stuff, but you're not going to find anything that's going to be demeaning or wrong on my feeds. That's the way that we should have to be and conduct ourselves. As we kind of go through this, I got to go through it quickly. I've only got a few minutes left. You are the product, not the customer. I think we've heard that before. When you walk into a supermarket, you're their customer. When you open Facebook, you're their product. Okay? You are their source of revenue. And making our kids and allowing our kids to understand that is going to be key to us understanding how to look at and have a good relationship with and balance our technology. A few funny things, and I just want you to take these. We don't have much time to go through each of them, but because y'all had such good comments and questions. But I asked a group of 12 to 17-year-olds. I think the 18-year-olds were on a retreat. I asked a group of 12 to 17-year-olds what came to their mind first when they thought of Facebook. Okay? Some of these are really funny, but some of these really tell us a lot about what kids are thinking about as far as what these social networks are doing in their lives. One kid, this is the first thing he said, that's where my dad goes to complain about stuff. And you know what? It's absolutely true. I know his dad, and his dad is on Facebook complaining about one thing or another. This road is not fixed. This congressman did this. They should be put in jail for this. Brr, 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 brr. Just nonstop. Not one thing on his feed. Not one thing on his feed was about, hey, why don't you come to church and I can share Jesus with you? We need to get our toes stepped on sometimes because we've got to stop that kind of stuff as Christians. Yes, injustices need to be brought out to light. Yes, wrongdoings need to be spoken out against of, right? I understand that. But to be constant on that, that's what that kid thought. Oh, that's where my dad goes to complain about stuff. That's it. And that's funny, but it's really not. So again, think about what we're doing. Think about what we're posting. One girl said, it's where my mom tags me in photos that I don't want anyone to see. Her mom, the girl in question, her mom had these old photo albums. And again, this was a few years ago. I think that we probably have parents now that don't have a physical photo of their children. You think about that for a second. The photos that we have are all on our phones. They're all in our libraries. They're all in those different types of things. At least they had a physical photos. They would scan. This woman would scan her photos in. This girl was like, "You cannot put a picture of me in the bathtub when I'm a baby. You cannot do that." She's got it on Facebook and everything, right? And so again, there's a little bit of an embarrassment factor, but it just goes to show the drastic change in time from the early 2000s to now. What has changed, right? It's mainly for old people, like my mom and my dad. Anybody want to guess how old his parents were at this point? Mid-30s. Exactly. They were like 36. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me, talking about my mom and my dad are being old people, okay? And then my favorite one is my grandpa writes on it in all caps. Now, if any of you senior citizens in the room write in all caps, I'm very sorry. Why do older people do that? Why do they do that? So they can see it, right? It's not, but what is internet, and all the kids can tell me, what is all caps vernacular for on the internet? Yelling, right? And so on my wife is the queen of Facebook, and she posts our boys' pictures from different things every time. She's gotten a lot better about it and stuff, but we'll have little old ladies come and comment, and every now and then there'll be a little old lady with all caps. Oh, that's so lovely. Thank you for sharing. I mean, it's so funny to see, but they just don't understand that that's yelling. But then again, it's like, no, they're doing all caps because they need to see it. They need to be able to look at it because the phone screens have gotten bigger. I understand that, but some of that text is really small sometimes. Okay, again, that's showing the generation gap and showing us exactly what that is. Twitter's a little bit different. I think I got just 1 or 2 minutes left. This one, and I'm just going to stop right here. Twitter is the social network my parents don't know how to use. And that's funny until you think about, wait a minute, I don't know how to use TikTok either. I don't know how to use Snapchat. And our kids are going to migrate to wherever we are not. You didn't ever want to hang out with your kids when you were a teenager. It didn't matter what year that was, if it was the 60s, 70s, or 80s, or whatever. You didn't want to hang out with your parents when you were a teenager. Our kids don't want to hang out with their parents on the same social networks when they're teenagers now. That's what we have to understand. It's been very wonderful to have you in Bible class this morning. Thank you so much for your comments. We'll go ahead and be dismissed for our worship. Again, thank you so much for having me this morning.